Asterisk, the main viewing gallery of the Galactic Concordance Hall, was a masterpiece of pressure and silence. Captain Lee Jones stood at the transparent wall, looking out at the swirling nebula that served as a neutral backdrop. His hands were clasped lightly behind his back, a picture of calm. Inside, his mind was a busy control room. His aide, Lieutenant Park Me, stood a step behind and to his left. Her eyes were not on the nebula, but on the reflection in the transparisteel. She watched the other delegations mingle. Her fingers brushed the smooth surface of her datapad, a nervous habit. "Remember the brief," John said, his voice low. He didn't turn his head. "We are petitioners today. We are asking for fair treatment, not demanding it." "I remember, sir," Me replied. Her tone was even, but a slight tension lived in her jaw. "It just grates." The Krell have been pushing into the Oberon sector for months. Their survey ships have weapons that could crack a planet. And our defense fleet around Oberon is 3 patrol cutters and a communication satellite. Jun finished, finally glancing at her. A faint, tired smile touched his lips. "I know. They see a young species, stretched thin, trying to play in the big leagues. That is the image we must maintain." For now, the image was, of course, a careful lie. Jun knew it. A select few on Earth knew it. The lie was a century in the making. It was a facade of mild technological competence and peaceful, overambitious expansion. It was a mask worn by all of humanity. A chime echoed through the gallery, soft but penetrating. The arbitration session was beginning. Jun gave a small nod to me, and they turned from the view. As they walked towards the central chamber, Chun's mind drifted, not to the coming debate, but to his grandfather's house by the sea. The old man's voice, rough like stones tumbling in water, filled his memory. He didn't speak of wars or great inventions. He spoke of silence, the deep, absolute silence between the stars. He spoke of the old travelers and sleeping giants under the ice, his words more poetry than history. Jun, as a boy, had thought them bedtime stories. Now, he understood they were fragments of a truth so large it had to be broken into fairy tales to be kept safe. The chamber was a wide, circular room with a central podium. The Krell delegation was already seated. Commander Kaver was an imposing figure, even seated. His avian heritage showed in the sharp angles of his face, the sleek feathers that formed a crest on his head, and his quick, precise movements. His 2 junior tacticians flanked him, their large, dark eyes missing nothing. Jun and me took their seats at the opposing table. The arbitrator, a gentle, slow-moving being from the aquatic Dalathi species, called the session to order. The proceedings were dry, full of navigational charts, resource assessments, and trade figures. Me presented the human case with cool efficiency, showing the documented Krell incursions. Kaver listened, his expression one of mild boredom. When it was his turn, he stood, his voice a clipped, sharp sound. "The Krell Dominion expands with purpose and right," he began. "The region in question is sparsely settled by your species. Your claim is sentimental. Your ability to secure it is, with all respect, questionable." He gestured, and a hologram sprang to life, showing schematics of known human vessels next to a Krell battlecruiser. The difference was laughable. "You see? Your largest ship is a light escort. We admire your spirit, truly. But the galaxy is not a kind place for the under-equipped. Our proposal for a joint administration of the Oberon sector is for your own protection. It is a generous offer." It was a polished threat. Jun felt me stiffen beside him. He placed a hand lightly on the table, a silent signal for her to hold. He stood. "Commander Kaver speaks of protection," John said, his voice calm and clear, carrying across the room. "But protection offered at the point of a gun is not generosity. It is coercion. The people of Oberon have chosen to be part of humanity. That choice must be respected. Kaver's beak-like mouth clicked softly, a sign of amusement. Choice is a luxury, Captain Lee. One must have strength to back a choice. Does your fleet provide that strength? Or does it merely provide targets? The insult hung in the air. The other alien observers in the gallery, a few insectoid Teline, a pair of mammalian Soren, remained silent. No one challenged the Krell. Not openly. The arbitrator called for a recess. Jun felt a cold anger settle in his stomach, not hot and impulsive, but deep and solid. They were not just bullying a neighbor. They were dismantling the human facade with crowbars, convinced it was all there was in the quiet of their assigned prep room. Mi finally let her frustration show. They're not even trying to hide it, sir. They'll push us out of Oberon, then the next sector and the next. They think we can't stop them. We can't, Jun said quietly, looking out the small port at the passing stars. Not with the ships they think we have. Before Mi could respond, Chun's personal datapad chimed with a unique, low-frequency tone he had heard only in drills. He pulled it out. On the screen was a string of complex, shifting symbols that resolved into a standard text box. It held a single line of text, followed by an authentication code that burned with the highest priority clearance. ***, Project Shepard is green. Unveil at your discretion. Authority, Earth Strategic Legacy Command. ***, Jun stared at the words. His breath caught. Shepard. The word from his grandfather's stories. The code he had been told might never come in his lifetime. Unveil at your discretion. The weight of it was immense. It was not an order. It was a key passed to him alone. He looked from the pad to Mi's confused face, then out to the stars where the Krell flagship orbited, a symbol of blunt, arrogant power. The cold anger in his gut transformed. It became a clear, crystalline purpose. The time for petitions was over. When the session reconvened, the arbitrator was about to speak when Jun stood. He did not wait to be recognized. Commander Kaver, Jun said, his voice cutting through the formal atmosphere. You have questioned our strength. You have measured our visible fleet and found it wanting. You speak of the harsh reality of the galaxy. Kaver tilted his head, curious at the interruption. I merely state facts, Captain. Facts are often limited by perspective, Jun replied. A hush fell over the room. This was not the script. The United Earth Governance believes in transparency and in answers. Therefore, we will provide one. He paused, letting the silence build. Mi watched him, her eyes wide, completely lost. We withdraw our petition for arbitration, Jun announced. A murmur rippled through the observers. Instead, we extend an invitation. An open invitation to the Krell Dominion and to all species represented here. We invite you to a historical review of our primary fleet assets, a demonstration of our foundational capabilities, to foster understanding and transparency. Kaver leaned forward, his dark eyes glinting. A demonstration? You wish to parade your little ships for us? This is a strange tactic. You misunderstand, Jun said, a slight, unreadable smile finally appearing on his face. It was not a friendly smile. Not the ships, you know. The others. The ones we have kept in reserve. The rendezvous coordinates will be transmitted. The edge of the Sol system. A place we call the Veil. He gathered his pad and nodded to me, who scrambled to follow, her mind reeling. We will expect you in 72 standard hours. The truth, Commander, is often hidden in plain sight. We are done hiding. Without another word, Captain Lee Jun turned and walked from the chamber, leaving behind a stunned silence. The facade of the harmless, overreaching human was gone, shattered by 7 sentences. In its place was a mystery, and a challenge thrown at the feet of a conqueror. The game had changed, and only one side knew the rules. The journey from the Concordance Hall to the edge of the Sol system took 72 hours. For Lieutenant Park Me, it felt like a year. She sat in her small cabin aboard the human cruiser Gagarin, staring at the data stream on her screen. It showed the familiar, humble specs of their ship: standard deuterium fusion drive, Class II defensive shields, a few point defense laser turrets, a capable vessel for patrol and diplomacy. A toy next to the Krell warship shadowing them, the Asterisk Talons. Of Justice was a blade of dark metal, 5 times the mass of the Gagarin Asterisk. Its sensor pods glowed with a hungry red light, constantly sweeping over the smaller human ship. They were looking for secrets, for any hint of hidden technology. They found nothing. Me knew they wouldn't. The Gazarin was exactly what it appeared to be. The lie was not in the ship, but in the destination. A soft chime at her door broke her focus. Enter. It was Dr. Choi Tae. He looked rumpled and annoyed, as if he had been pulled from a deep archaeological dig, which, in a way, he had. His expertise was in pre-spaceflight human artifacts and forgotten colony records. He had no idea why a military captain had demanded his immediate presence on this mission. "Lieutenant," he said, not bothering with a greeting, "I have reviewed the supplied coordinates. There is nothing at that location. It is empty void beyond the Kuiper Belt. A place with more cosmic dust than rocks. Is this a joke? A negotiation stunt? I have real work to do." Me gestured for him to sit. "It's not a joke, Doctor. The captain will explain." "He has done nothing but smile cryptically for 2 days," Tay grumbled, but he sat. "We are leading a hostile battle group to an empty spot in space. What is the plan? To bore them into leaving?" Before Me could answer, her console pinged. It was an incoming request for a private channel from the Talons of Justice. Commander Kaver's sharp-featured face appeared on the screen. "Lieutenant Park," Kaver said, his voice dripping with false courtesy, "I trust your voyage is comfortable. We continue to scan your vessel. Its simplicity is enlightening. We await this demonstration with great interest. I do hope it is more impressive than your arbitration arguments." Me kept her face neutral. "The demonstration will speak for itself, Commander." "I am sure it will." Kyver's eyes narrowed. "Out of curiosity, what is the purpose of your civilian passenger? Dr. Choi, is it? An archaeologist. Are you hoping to dig up some ancient human trinkets to impress us?" "The doctor is a specialist in foundational history," Me replied, choosing her words with care. "His expertise is highly relevant to what you will see." Kaver let out a soft, clicking laugh. "Foundational history. How quaint. We shall see." The screen went dark. Tay had gone pale. "They know I'm here. They think this is a farce." "It is not a farce," a new voice said. Captain Lee Jun stood in the doorway. He stepped inside, and the door hissed shut. He looked at Tay. "Doctor, you are here because you are one of the few people alive who has seen pieces of the puzzle, even if you didn't know it." Tay shook his head. "I study broken pottery and old radiation logs from dead colonies. I don't know anything about secret fleets." Jun sat opposite him. "Not a fleet, a foundation. Tell me, in your work, have you ever found records too consistent to be myth, but too old to be history? Stories of sky temples or stone seeds from a dozen lost cultures, all predating civilization?" Tay blinked. "Well, yes. The Sumerian cylinder seals depicting vast objects in the sky that are not stars. The carvings in the Andes showing geometric shapes that match no known constellation. The Aboriginal songlines that speak of the Dreamtime ships. But they are just proto-mythology, primitive attempts to explain celestial phenomena. What if they weren't?" June asked softly. He pulled out his datapad and called up a file. It was a star map, but not of the current galaxy. It was an ancient plot using symbols Tay recognized from his own research. A path was highlighted, leading from a point near Earth's solar system out into a specific spiral arm. Overlaying it was a map of known space, showing the core worlds of the Krell, the Galathea, the Taylene. The ancient path passed directly through the regions where those species had first evolved. Tay's academic curiosity overcame his fear. He leaned forward. This alignment. It's statistically impossible as a coincidence. What is this? It's a route, Mi said quietly. A delivery route. Jun zoomed in on the destination point on the ancient map. It matched the coordinates he had given the Krell. The Veil. Tay looked from the map to Chun's serious face. A dizzying idea began to form. You're not talking about warships. You're talking about artifacts, relics. We are talking about the reason we have always seemed just a step behind, Chun said, his voice low and intense. For over a century, Earth's greatest project hasn't been building a navy to match the neighbors. It has been guarding, studying, and hiding the source. Every resource, every brilliant mind we didn't send to military labs, went into understanding what is out there. We are not warriors, Doctor. We are curators. And today, the museum opens its doors. On the bridge of the Talons of Justice, Commander Kaver watched the Gagarin on the main viewer. His tactical officer, a junior Krell named Vrol, approached. Commander, final scan results are in. The human ship possesses no hidden weapon emplacements, no exotic energy signatures. Their power output is exactly as expected for a vessel of its class. They are defenseless. Kaver preened a feather on his forearm, a satisfied gesture. As I suspected, this is a bluff, a desperate act of theater. They have nothing to show us but empty space and shame. What are your orders after the demonstration fails? Vrol asked. We will broadcast their humiliation to the Concordance. Then we will escort the Gagarin back to their homeworld. We will present the humans with an ultimatum, full annexation of the disputed sectors, and a permanent Krell oversight presence in their government. They will sign it, or we will burn one of their cities from orbit. They have no viable defense. Vrol shifted uncomfortably. The other species, the Galathea, may protest. Let them, Kyver sneered. They are fish who learn to talk. They have no spine for conflict. Once humanity is brought to heel, the others will fall in line. The galaxy belongs to the strong. It always has. Back on the Gagarin, Jun, Mi, and Tay stood on the command bridge. The forward screen showed the starfield, vast and empty. The navigation beacon flashed, indicating they had reached the exact coordinates. We are here, the helmsman said. The Veil. On the sensor display, the Talons of Justice and the smaller observation ships from the Galathea and Deline hung in space behind them. Watching Tay looked around at the empty space. Captain, there's nothing here. Just us. Jun walked to the central com station. He inserted a physical key from around his neck into a slot. A panel opened, revealing a simple, old-fashioned button beneath a clear cover. He looked at me, then at Tay. For over 100 years, only a handful of people have had the authority to press this, he said. It does not fire a weapon. It sends a wake-up call. He flipped the cover up. He did not hesitate. He pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence on the bridge was absolute. On the screen, the stars stared back, cold and distant. Then space began to cry. It was a low, sub-audio vibration that shook the very bones of the crew. The stars in front of the Gagarin shimmered like a heat haze over a desert. The shimmer grew, warping the light, bending reality itself. It looked as if a giant invisible curtain was being pulled back from the universe. And behind it, something began to appear. The vibration was not a sound. It was a feeling. It moved through the hull of the Gagarin and into the bones of the crew. On the bridge, the lights flickered and stabilized. Lieutenant Harkme's hands flew over her console. The readings made no sense. Spatial distortion off the scale, she reported, her voice tight. It's not a cloaking field. It's more like a dimensional fold. Something was tucked away in a different layer of reality. She looked up, her eyes wide. And it's unfolding. Captain Lee Jun stood perfectly still, watching the main viewer. The starfield was gone. In its place, a massive shape blotted out the darkness. It was not sleek. It was not made of polished metal. It was geometric, ancient, and colossal. The first thing that struck Dr. Choi Tae was the sheer size. The object was easily the size of a small moon. Its surface was not smooth hull plating, but something that looked like fused stone and dark, weathered metal. It was covered in deep grooves and channels that formed patterns, circles, spirals, intersecting lines. Some grooves glowed with a soft, inner blue light. As his eyes adjusted, he recognized the shapes. Those markings. That's a form of protocuneiform. And there, those are early ideograms from the Yellow River Valley. They're all mixed together. This is impossible. More shapes were emerging from the unraveling veil of space. Not one, but dozens. They were not identical. Some were vast pyramids. Others were elongated cylinders. One looked like a titanic, multifaceted diamond. They hung in the void, silent and motionless, humming with a foundational energy that made the ship systems whisper in fear. On the talons of justice, the mood shattered in an instant. Commander Caver's smug confidence evaporated. He shot to his feet, his crest flaring. What is that? A station? A trick of light? Junior Tactician Vral was staring at his own sensor suite, his hands trembling. Commander, the energy signature. It's primordial. It reads older than our oldest planetary crust. The composition. The outer layer is a composite unknown to our science. It reads as literal stone and metal, but it's radiating a power output that exceeds our entire fleet by orders of magnitude. Weapons. Caver barked. Scan for weapons. I cannot, Commander, Vral stammered. Our active scans are being absorbed. They reveal nothing, but passive scans show internal structures, vast open spaces, and biological signatures. Biological? There are life forms inside? Not life forms, Commander. Vral's voice was a whisper of dread. Matrices. Fossilized biological templates. Genetic blueprints held in stasis. I am running a comparative analysis. His console chimed. The result made him recoil. Commander, one of the dominant genetic patterns inside the nearest construct. It is a 99.8% match for the Krell evolutionary baseline. Caver felt the deck lurch beneath him. It was not the ship. It was his understanding of the universe. What are you saying? It's us, Vral breathed. Our genetic origin is in that. That thing. On the Gagarin me was getting the same results, her face pale with awe. Captain, the constructs are broadcasting on a fundamental frequency. It's a carrier wave that underpins all modern subspace communications. We didn't invent subspace tech. We reverse-engineered the static from these objects. She called up another readout. Deep scans show what Dr. Vral is seeing. The constructs contain the seed patterns for at least 12 distinct evolutionary trees. I am reading strong matches for the Galathi, the Taline, and the Krell. Jun finally spoke, his eyes never leaving the majestic, silent arcs. They are not warships. His voice was quiet, but carried across the hushed bridge. They never were. They are shepherds. They are arcs. They are gardeners. They traveled the galaxy, seeding life on suitable worlds, guiding its development, protecting it in its infancy. Tay understood now. The ancient stories, the sky temples, the stone seeds. They were not myths. They were memories. Fragmented, passed down memories of these very objects visiting a young Earth. We didn't build them, he said, the realization hollowing him out. We found them. We were chosen by them, Jun corrected gently. The data suggests a caretaker protocol was left for the first species to achieve sentience in this nursery. That was us. Our task was not to use their power, but to guard it. To let the other children grow up without knowing their parents were watching. He moved to the comm panel. He opened a channel to all ships, but his words were for Kaver. Commander, you asked to see our primary fleet assets. You are looking at them. They are not weapons. They are the reason you exist. On the screen, Kovar's face appeared. All arrogance was gone. He looked shrunken, confused. This is a deception. A genetic trick, is it? Jun asked. Your science can confirm the age. It can confirm the genetic resonance. These constructs have been here, in this silent orbit, for millions of years, waiting. Humanity's entire spacefaring history has been shaped by their silent presence. Every resource we didn't spend on battleships went into studying them, learning from them, and most importantly, keeping them secret. We hid the cradle to protect the children, even from each other. Jun gestured to me. She put an image on the shared channel. It was a schematic of one of the arcs, with a specific energy conduit highlighted. This is a quantum field generator, Commander. It is not a weapon. Its purpose is to stabilize planetary cores and regulate climate. It is a terraforming engine. The same basic technology is used in the atmospheric processors on your homeworld, is it not? You developed it 200 years ago. Kaver was silent. It was true. It was a foundational technology of his civilization. You didn't invent it, Jun said, not unkindly. You rediscovered it. The echo of this technology is baked into the subspace frequency your species first used to reach the stars. You were not creating. You were remembering. The sheer scale of the lie, of the truth, was overwhelming. The Krell's proud martial history, their conquests, their belief in their own superior destiny, it was all built on a foundation they never knew was there. Guarded by a species they considered weak, the Galathi observer ship hailed the Gagarin. The gentle, watery face of their diplomat appeared. Captain Lee, the Galathi said, its voice full of a profound emotion. Our scans show. Our aquatic origin template is present in the third construct. The Seed of Tides, as it is named in our oldest legends. We thought it was a story of our gods. It is a story of your beginning, Jun replied, his voice softening. As it is for all of us. Jun looked back at Kfor. The Krell commander was staring at nothing, his mind trying to rebuild a shattered worldview. His mighty warship, the Talons of Justice, was now just a small, ugly piece of scrap metal floating before the monuments of its own creation. The calculus has changed. Commander, June said, his final words dropping into the stunned silence. You came here to threaten the children. You ended up pointing your guns at your own cradle. The question is no longer about human weakness. It is about what happens now that the Guardians have decided to stop hiding the garden. The silence that followed Captain Lee Chun's words was thicker than the void outside. On the bridge of the Gagarin, the only sounds were the soft hum of life support and the quiet beeps from Lieutenant Parkme's console. She watched the data flow, her mind struggling to keep up. The truth was not just a thing you learned. It was a wave that washed over you, changing the shape of everything you knew. On the main viewer, The face of Commander Kaver was frozen. The sharp, proud angles of his features seemed to have softened, sinking under a weight too large to bear. His dark eyes were fixed on something far away, not on John. Behind him, on the bridge of the Talons of Justice, Junior Tactician Vral was visibly shaking, his hands hovering over his controls as if they were suddenly alien to him. It was Viral who broke the silence on their end. His voice was a cracked whisper, but it carried over the open channel. Confirmed. The resonance is. It is absolute. The foundational genetic sequence of the Krell species is present in Construct 4. It is not a cousin. It is a template. A blueprint. He looked up, his avian face a mask of horrified awe. Commander, we are not conquerors. We are a harvest. That word, harvest, seemed to wake Kaver from his stupor. A flicker of the old anger returned, a defense against the unbearable. This changes nothing. He snapped, but his voice lacked its usual force. It was the desperate cry of a man trying to deny the sky was blue. They are machines. Old stones. This is a human trick to shame us. Is it? Chun's voice was calm, a rock in the storm of Kaver's denial. Look at your own ship, Commander. Scan its power core. Look at the harmonic frequency of its subspace drive. Run the analysis. Do it yourself. Almost against his will, Kaver gestured sharply to Vral. The junior tactician's fingers flew. A complex readout appeared on their screen, showing the energy signature of the Talons of Justice S heart. Then another window opened, showing the ambient energy radiating from the nearest vast construct, the one they now called the Ark. A simple algorithm compared the two. The lines on the graph did not just match. The ship's frequency was a tiny, noisy, simplified echo of the Ark's perfect, profound hum. Your technology, Chun said, watching the realization dawn on the faces of the Krell Bridge crew, is a child's attempt to mimic a symphony it heard in the cradle. You built guns from the echo of a lullaby. Dr. Choi Tae finally found his voice. He stepped closer to Chun's side, his academic passion overriding the monumental shock. It is the same for all of you, he said, addressing the other observers. His screen lit up with comparisons. The Galaxy aquatic recycling systems? The basic principle is there. In the Ark, you call the seed of tides. It is a system for managing complex biospheres. The Tilian crystalline communication? It is a degraded form of the hard-light data storage we found inside these constructs. Tae's eyes were alight with a terrible, wonderful understanding. You all spent millennia climbing the ladder of progress, thinking you were building it from the ground up. But the ladder was already here. Humanity just never climbed it. We were sitting at the bottom, making sure no one knocked it over. The Galaxy diplomat spoke again, its watery voice full of a deep, trembling emotion. You hid this. For all this time, you let us believe we were alone, that our achievements were our own. Why? Jun took a deep breath. This was the core of it. The reason for the great and patient lie. Because a gun is simpler than a garden, he said, looking at each of the alien faces on his screen. The technology in these arcs is not for destruction. It is for creation, for healing, for weaving life and stitching space-time. What do you think a young, proud species would have done with this power 1,000 years ago? Or even 100? The Krell Dominion found an echo and built warships. What would you have built if you had found the source? He let the question hang. The answer was obvious. They would have built empires. They would have made gods of themselves. They might have broken the very cradle they came from. We were not keeping a weapon from you, Jun continued, his gaze settling on Kyver. We were keeping a responsibility for you. A dangerous gift. We waited. We watched. We hoped you would grow past the need to conquer, to maybe be ready to learn how to nurture instead. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. Perhaps we waited too long. Your threats forced our hand. Kaver had been silent, listening. The anger had bled away, leaving something hollow. He looked from Jun to the monstrous, beautiful arc on his own viewer. His entire life, his victories, his pride. It felt like sand. He had spent his life boasting about a castle he built, only to learn it was a sand castle on the shore of an ocean he never knew was there. What now? The question came from Kaver, but it was stripped of all its command. It was just a question. You have these gods. You could have ruled the galaxy. You could have crushed us at any time. Jun shook his head. The shepherds do not obey commands. They are not a fleet. They are a library and a nursery and a monument. We cannot use them to rule. We can only learn from them and protect them. And now we must share them. He straightened his posture. The calm diplomat was gone. In his place stood the firstborn, the keeper of the gate. This is the new reality, Jun announced, his voice clear and firm. The veil is open. The secret is out. Humanity proposes a new council, not a concordance based on trade and threat, but a guardian accord, a pact to study these arcs together, to understand our shared origin, to use the knowledge within not for war, but for healing worlds, healing societies. He looked directly at Kaver. The Oberon sector is not a prize to be won. It is a region with a faint, residual energy signature from an arc passed by 1,000,000 years ago. It is part of your heritage, as it is part of ours. It should be a place of joint study, not a battlefield. The shift was total. The conversation was no longer about borders and weapons. It was about ancestry and inheritance. You could not threaten your long-lost brother when your common father's house hung in the sky. Between you, Kaver slowly sank back into his command chair. The fight was gone. He looked old. I must confer with my government. This is beyond my authority. Of course, Jun said, not unkindly. Take your time. The shepherds have been waiting for millions of years. They can wait a little longer. He closed the general channel, leaving the alien ships to their silent, world-shattering contemplation. On the Gagoran Bridge, the tension slowly began to drain away, replaced by a deep, vibrating all.me let out a long, shaky breath. Did we just prevent a war by giving everyone an existential crisis? Jun walked to the viewport, looking at the silent arcs. Their ancient stony faces were lit by the distant sun. No, he said quietly. We ended an old game by changing the rules. The war they wanted to fight is meaningless now. The only thing left to fight is ignorance. He placed a hand on the cool transparisteel. Now the real work begins. A standard galactic year later, the main hall of the Concordance was different. It was still the same physical space, but the feeling in the air had changed. The tension of threat and negotiation was gone, replaced by a low hum of focused curiosity. The species did not just face each other across tables. They mingled near shared holographic displays. Their conversations a murmur of different languages flowing through translators at the front of the hall. A young woman stood beside a large, floating image of the galaxy. She was Kim Yuna, a human Xena historian. Her audience was not made of diplomats, but of students young Krell, Galathi, Tulin, and human students, all sitting together. The question most asked in the immediate aftermath, Yuna said, her voice clear and warm, was why? Why did humanity hide the truth? She gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on the Sol system. On the region called the Veil, images of the great arcs appeared, rotating slowly. The simplest answer is the correct one. To protect you. All of you. A young Krell student, her feathers still fluffy with youth, raised a hand. But your own development was slowed. You had no great warships. You seemed weak. Was that not a danger? Una smiled. It was a calculated risk. Imagine if a child is given the keys to a starship before learning to walk. What happens? Catastrophe. Our ancestors believed the same was true for civilizations. The technology in the arcs is not for fighting. It is for building, for healing, for understanding the fabric of life itself. A species that has not learned to manage its own planet responsibly is not ready for that power. We waited, hoping the galaxy would mature. She changed the image. Now it showed the famous first sensor readings from the talons of justice, the genetic match that had stunned Commander Kaver. The unveiling was not an act of aggression. It was an intervention. An older sibling stepping in to stop a fight by reminding everyone of the family they belonged to. It changed the conversation from "what can I take" to "where do we come from?" The students listened, rapt. This was their history now. A shared one dot near the edge of the Sol system, the view was even more different. The space around the veil was no longer empty. A station now hung in the shadow of the smallest arc, a collaborative construction. It was called Guardian Station 1. Its architecture was a blend of styles, human practicality. Krell angular efficiency, Galathi flowing forms. On its observation deck, Captain Lee Jun, now with the new title of Senior Liaison, stood with Lieutenant Park Mi. She wore the insignia of the newly formed Guardian Corps. Below them, in a docking bay, a ship was preparing to depart. It was not a warship. It was a Tylene science vessel. Its hull was not bare metal, but covered in a living lattice of flowering vines from its homeworld. A symbol of peace and growth. The first formal cultural and genetic exchange, Mi said, reading from a datapad. They're bringing botanical samples, whose DNA shows direct markers from the arc biological matrices. They want to compare them to Earth's ancient flora. Jun nodded, watching the gentle activity. A year ago, they might have sent a probe wrapped in stealth coating to steal a rock. Now they send a garden. The Krell research team arrives next week, Mi added. They've submitted a request to study the energy conduits in Arc 4. They've stopped all work on their new Plasma Lance project. They're retooling the factories to build environmental stabilizers based on the preliminary schematics we shared. That was the most profound change. The Krell Dominion had not collapsed. It had evolved. The shock of their origin had broken their ideology of conquest. What was the point of conquering your cousins? Their fierce pride had been redirected, not extinguished. They now wanted to be the first to understand, the first to master the non-destructive principles of the arc technology. It was a competition of knowledge, not destruction. Jun's datapad chimed. It was a personal message. The sender code was from Commander Kaver. Jun opened it. The message was brief, written in the formal, clipped style of Kullian military text, but the content was unprecedented. Asterisk, Senior Liaison Lee. Our initial analysis of the Oberon sector geological data is complete. The resonance echoes are consistent with a close pass arc event. We concur with your earlier proposal. We recommend the sector be designated a heritage zone under joint stewardship. Our science team is prepared to work with yours. I will be leading it. Kaver. Asterisk Jun read it twice. A request for cooperation. An acknowledgement of shared heritage. From Kaver. He showed the pad to me. I never thought I'd see the day. Mi whispered. The universe is full of surprises, Jun said. He looked out the viewport, past the bustling station, to the silent, monolithic forms of the arcs. They were no longer a hidden threat, a secret weapon. They were a shared inheritance. A North Star for the entire galactic neighborhood. His work, The work of his grandparents and their grandparents before them was over. The long, patient lie was finished. The weight of the secret was gone. In its place was a new weight, the weight of open truth, of collaboration, of guiding a young galactic family towards a future none of them could yet imagine. The Tylene ship, its vines glowing softly in the light of the distant sun, detached from the station and began to move. It did not head out into the void for conquest. It turned gently, aligning its course for the nearest arc, its mission one of peaceful, awestruck study. That me broke the comfortable silence. Do you think they'd be proud? The ones who started this? The first humans who found the arcs and decided to keep the secret? Jun watched the flower-covered ship dwindle against the immense ancient stone of the shepherd. He thought of his grandfather's stories by the sea, of sleeping giants. The giants were awake now. Everyone could see them. I think, Jun said slowly, they would be proud we finally knew when to stop hiding. They were caretakers of a mystery. We get to be guides to a legacy. It's a harder job, but it's a better one. He turned from the view. There were reports to read, meetings to attend, a galaxy learning to see itself in a new light. The work of building a family, he thought, was just beginning. And for the first time in human history, they would not be doing it alone.